Okay, go on.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Nutrat here. Inshallah, we'll be starting our Quran study today from Surah. It's Surah 24, um, Light, Al Nur,
Mhm.
and starting from verse 27, inshallah. And we start with reciting, I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Subtitle is Divine Adequate. O you who believe, do not enter homes other than yours without permission from their inhabitants and without greeting them. This is better for you, that you may take heed. If you find no one in them, do not enter them until you obtain permission. If you are told go back, you must go back. This is purer for you. God is fully aware of everything you do. You commit no error by entering uninhabited homes wherein there is something that belongs to you. God knows everything you reveal and everything you conceal. So God talks about the even small adequates. For example, when we visit people's homes, that even if we know them, we just cannot just barge into the house if the door is unlocked or, you know. So we should always obtain permission. These are small adequates. God wants us to have the best examples of as believers, from smaller things to how to greet people, how we enter homes. There are a lot of societies where you go and people just show up without calling, and somebody could be in you know uh, not dressed, or could have be having an intimate moment, or they have other party or somebody invited, or their dinner time. So to eliminate any kind of embarrassment for either party, you know that God wants us to have best manners, basically. So it's not like we go there and then we don't even greet them. We just show up just because these people. God says this is better for you, that you may take heed. So definitely, these days everybody has telephone. Like, let's say there were no phones in the older times, then we knock the door, and if somebody comes out, then you ask, may I come in? If they were not expecting you, and if they say go back, no, this is not a good time, so don't be embarrassed by that, or don't be repulsed by it. Um, it's a fair assumption that this is not a good time to be there. So God says you must go back. So if they don't give you permission at that time or any other time, don't push your presence on somebody else. This could develop into, like an unpleasant situation and affect your relationship with these people. So, in order to respect other people's wishes, we should not impose our presence without permission to enter anybody's home. Whether we know them, their friends, their relatives, it's better for us to do that. I mean, look at Quran, subhanallah, so fully detailed. God would not even leave any adequate outside, because whatever is good for us and our soul, God knows it. God knows that God has designed and created human being, and He knows the psychology, what works to have a good relationship and respect uh, of the people we mingle with on daily basis, or who are our relatives, um, friends, or just acquaintances. So God said, this is purer for you. This is a good thing. We should not be embarrassed by that if somebody says go back. God knows everything what we do. So that's how He has designed the way of life for us. And then God says, for example, you commit no error by entering uninhabited homes wherein there is something that belongs to you. So, for example, there is a house and nobody's living there at the time, and it's locked or it's closed, or a house there at that moment there's nobody, but there's something which belongs to you and you must have it. So, in all honesty, God knows that you need this, whatever that is, and you can go there and get your item or something which belongs to you, and that is okay, because a believer will not abuse this entry by doing anything wrong with other things, or you just take your item, go. And then God talks about the dress code for believers, 24:30. Tell the believing men that they shall subdue their eyes and not stare at the women, and to maintain their chastity. This is purer for them. God is fully cognizant of everything they do. Footnote 430 is dressing modestly, therefore, is a trait of the believing men and women. The minimum requirements for a woman's dress is to lengthen her garment, 3359, and to cover her chest. Tyrannical Arab traditions have given a false impression that a woman must be covered from head to toe. Such is not a Quranic or Islamic dress. 2431. And tell the believing women to subdue their eyes and maintain their chastity. They shall not reveal any parts of their bodies except that which is necessary. They shall cover their chests and shall not relax this code in the presence of other than their husbands, their fathers of their husbands, the fathers of their husbands, their sons, the sons of their husbands, their brothers, the sons of their brothers, the sons of their sisters, and other women, the male servants or employees whose sexual drive has been nullified, or the children who have not reached puberty. They shall not strike their feet when they walk in order to shake and reveal certain details of their bodies. All of you shall repent to God, O you who believe, O you believers, that you may succeed. Uh, Women in Islam and the dress code is a big uh, issue, um, and certain countries, um, it is happening actually a lot more than it used to be in 60s or 70s, that they were much more relaxed. People somehow did not believe that women should be so, they should be abaya and hijab and this and that. What God describes is here is very clear and should be sufficient for us. Um, so, but before that, in 24:30, God talks about how a believing man, how believing men should behave. It's not like they have free ticket to look at women and only women should be taking care of their, should be modest and should be dressed so covered that no man would be able to look at them if they even want to. This is not the case here. Men are equally responsible to maintain their chastity, and how they should not be staring at women. They should subdue their eyes when when they talk to women, and if they feel they are attracted to them or something, they should immediately subdue their eyes. It can happen. that they like somebody, and then they should not be staring at them to embarrass them or to kind of impose their presence and make them feel uncomfortable. um, so they should maintain their chastity by behaving like a righteous man, and subdue their eyes. God says this is purer for them. And the women, believing women, should subdue their eyes as well. They should not be staring at men, you know, and maintain their chastity. And they shall not reveal any parts of their bodies except that which is necessary. So, what is necessary? If you're working, with your arms and hands, um, your legs, your feet, you know, that's necessary to move around and all that. And there is also a dress code, which is, God says to lengthen the garments, meaning there should be a modest length for our dresses, as long as, extra parts of bodies are not being revealed. For example, like you have to determine which country, which society we're living in. Um, that somewhere, it's like under, below your knees, or something. One has to determine what makes them feel comfortable and modest. So the real righteousness is not exactly through your clothes, but your behavior, your belief has to be righteous. The God says the best garment is the garment of righteousness that your soul wears, how your soul feels. And whatever necessary, if you are working, you're modestly covered. Your chest should be, women's chest is definitely should be covered. They should not have be roaming around bare chested. Um, we know that there's certain tribes in the world, they still have like no clothes because there is none. They're like living very remote. So that's their culture. But God is talking about believing women, you know. So they need to be wearing clothes which are not too revealing, you know, modestly lengthened garments, and that's all what it is. And then one can be fully covered, but they walk and they shake their bodies in a way that through clothes you can see what is happening, that you can show your body in many ways. So that really is what is important, is that God knows everybody's innermost thoughts. Our thoughts should be pure and righteous, that we're not kind of revealing um, our bodies for, like to get attention, opposite sex attention or something, and walking in a way, even though we're fully clothed, that you could, be showing the curves of your body and whatnot. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the whole point is here is that what is necessary um, for our daily living life. We were working outside the house. Um, our hands and arms must be free. If it is all covered in a burqa or something, how would you work? So um, we know that there are some, like, only women's eyes are outside, and they will be wearing some gloves, even some in the hot weather, socks, a big burqa and all that, and head is covered, and even the eyes have something. That is absolutely not mentioned here. So that's a man-made prohibition to control women and keep them as their properties, fully clothed like an object, and while men totally exercise different privileges, this is not a God law about the dress code. 2432, encourage marriage to discourage immorality. You shall encourage those who are single to get married. They may marry the righteous among your male and female servants. If you are poor, God will enrich them um, from His grace. God is bounteous knower. Those who cannot afford to get married shall maintain morality until God provides for them from His grace. Those among your servants who wish to be freed in order to marry, you shall grant them their wish once you realize that they are honest and give them from God's money that He has bestowed upon you. You shall not force your girls to commit prostitution, seeking the materials of this world, if they wish to be chaste. If anyone forces them, then God, seeing that they are forced, is forgiver, merciful. We have revealed to you clarifying revelations and examples from the past generations and an enlightenment for the righteous. So, God talks about encouraging marriage to discourage immorality. What is immorality? When people start seeking relationship with others without marriage or with those who are not legally theirs, that spreads immorality. So God knows that after a certain age, people need to be married, need to have a partner, you know. So if you're a parent, you encourage your children to get married at a right age. And so to they may marry the righteous among your male and female servants who are single. Those of you who are single to get married, they may marry the righteous among your male and female servants. If they are poor, God will enrich them from His grace. God is bounteous, Lord. So it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't have a lot of money, but enough, they can take care of their spouse. Um, God will encourage marriage. Don't be afraid that, oh, it's not much money, so they must wait another 10 years until they have a house, a car, and this and that. But God says, His righteous servants, should find their partners, other believers, and if they're poor, God will suffice them with His bounties. And those who cannot afford to get married, for example, a person doesn't have enough, absolutely very tight, doesn't have a job, has no dowry. So God says, um, wait and keep your morality. Don't become, impatient. And this can be a test. So maintain your morality until God provides for them from His grace. Um, and some, if in older times, if you had servants or slaves who wish to be freed in order to marry, you shall grant them their wish once you realize that they are honest, and give them from God's money that He had bestowed, and help them get married. If you have servants or slaves, we don't have slaves these days, uh, not technically, but if you have a servant, they're righteous believers, help them, to get married. This is a righteous cause. And God talks about not encouraging or forcing your daughters to commit prostitution to gain money, to use them. I don't know, I think it was very maybe common in the time of ignorance. That's how people were forcing their daughters or anybody else. That's gross. This is not a good thing, and especially if those girls it's unwilling to do that. And but God says, if a girl feels forced and fears kind of a consequence of saying no, then God will forgive her, you know, but not the parent who is forcing them. God talks about that He has revealed to us these clarifying revelations. It clarifies everything from smaller, adequate dress code, um, how to visit somebody, what to wear, marriages, and all that. Um, so, this Quran is an enlightenment for the righteous. Whoever wants to observe the entire conduct of our how to live this life in every possible righteous manner, it's laid out in the Quran from God. For those who want to take heed, this Quran has all kinds of enlightenment if we want to live a righteous life. Subhanallah. God. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. The allegory of his light is that of a concave mirror behind a lamp that is placed inside a glass container. The glass container is like a bright pearl like star. The fuel thereof is supplied from a blessed oil producing tree that is neither eastern nor western. Its oil is almost self radiating, needs no fire to ignite it. Light upon light. God guides to his light whomever he wills. God thus cites the parables for the people. God is fully aware of all things. God's guidance is found in houses exalted by God, for his name is commemorated therein, glorifying him therein day and night. Well, this is an allegory God has described about himself. Who is God? You know, this is a parable. God has cited many parables in the Quran, examples, because we really cannot. There is no example of anything which is material in this world that we can think about God. You know, oh, how who is God and how he looks like, and you know. But this is a parable to imagine. Like we really, I have tried to imagine many times, but my vision is not that great that I can encompass this allegory even. You know, the God says, the allegory of his light. First, God says, God is the light of the heavens and the earth. So, meaning, he is, because of him, there is the shine or the light or the glow or the life, the element of life, whatever is bright, is because of God. He has created everything. So it's His light everywhere. If there is no, if there is absence of God, you know, everything is dark. Nothing exists actually. There's nothing there. So He is the life and the light of everything in the heavens and the earth. And then the allegory of His light is that of a concave mirror behind a lamp is placed inside a glass container. So sometimes I think about a mirror in front of a mirror, and then there is a light in between, like a lamp. And then you will see the reflection going in both ways to infinity. Um, but God says the glass container is like a bright pearl like star. Now, I cannot imagine bright pearl like star. Which you see, the light of pearl is very delicate. You know, it's not like, doesn't hurt your eyes. A pearl has a very um, moonish kind of light. I don't know how to describe it. Like very beautiful and mellow, pearly light. Um, and the fuel thereof is supplied from a blessed oil producing tree. That is neither eastern nor western. So it is a oil producing tree, the supply of that lamp, which is inside a glass container, uh, is like a bright pearl like star, and then the fuel which is coming to it, which is burning it, is a blessed oil producing tree. So some tree which is out of this world, we cannot imagine. And remember, this is all an allegory for us to picture something that this tree doesn't belong, it's not from the east side or the western side of this hemisphere, uh, but it's almost self radiating. So it is something which is producing the light on its own. It doesn't need, it's hard to describe. This allegory is just, I even get lost in the words here. And it needs no fire to ignite it. So this light which is burning from this sick, blessed oil producing tree, which looks, this light looks like a bright pearl like star. Um, and it's in between a glass container and a concave mirror. What else I can say, and you see the infinity of this light goes beyond our imagination. Oh, that God, light upon light. Of course, its reflection is everywhere. And then it's just endless light from self radiating or self producing oil, which is blessed. So we really, God is nobody. God says he no big he has no father nor a son. You know, he's one and only God, the source of all the goodness and life and the light within the heavens and the earth. And this is the allegory for all those minds who can have their own imagination to picture this parable, um, which is every mind, I'm sure, will have their own imagination. So, what God leaves to us is that's just a glimpse of, you know, how pure His light is and how the light is for the life of everything on the heavens and the earth. And God says He guides to His light whomever He wills. So He's whoever deserved to be guided in His light, where you see everything clearly. Because without light, remember, there are no colors. You don't see nothing. They're just darkness upon darkness. So the parable of God's light is His light, which only comes from His presence and His guidance. He chooses among His servants. He knows who deserves to see that light, whereupon they will become seers of everything else. No matter how dark it looks like, but that person who is guided will be seeing that light of God and will be seeing the righteousness, the path of righteousness, and he'll walk on it. And God thus cites the parables for the people. God is fully aware of all things. So his parables are also will be understood by those who will see that light. Otherwise, people don't even understand simple things. God's guidance is found in houses exalted by God, for his name is commemorated therein, glorifying him therein day and night. Of course, God's guidance is found in houses exalted by God. Wherever his name is being recited, those houses are exalted by God, are blessed by God, and they will have his guidance therein. The homes where there's nobody knows God's name, there's nobody thanking God or imploring God for anything or commemorating or worshiping God. It's just darkness there. There is no blessing. They're just running on empty basically without any guidance and randomly, you know. When you have guidance, It's very simple to follow the path, to see the path where it leads you. Otherwise, you fall in the darkness here and there without the light. Those who frequent the masjid, people who are not distracted by business or trade from commemorating God, they observe the contact prayers and give the obligatory charity zakat, and they are conscious of that day when the minds and the eyes will be horrified. God will certainly reward them for their good works and will shower them with His grace. God provides for whomever He wills without limits. Um, God wants us to frequent the masjid. Um, so when, especially, if there you live in a place where there are masjids and you can go for contact prayers to do with the congregation, um, you should frequent the masjid. At least now, or what mandatory is for us is the do the congregational prayer with the community and give the obligatory charity zakat. And his believers are mindful of the day, uh, when the day when this world ends, and we all will be summoned to God, and they are aware that that day is very tough. The eyes will be horrified, so we have to be believers will be prepared for that day. They will have that day in their minds as long as they're living this life, while the others will be shocked. That's why that day is called as shocker too. It would be a shocker for them. And God will reward those who worshipped Him, who were aware of that day, and they did good works, that they believed in the hereafter. They knew they will be held responsible, and God will shower them with His grace, and He provides for whomever He wills without limit. So all provisions, all the good things come from God, and God is the one who decides how much every soul should have. Chasing a mirage. As for those who disbelieve, their works are like a mirage in the desert. A thirsty person thinks that it is water, but when he reaches it, he finds that it is nothing, and he finds God there instead to requite him fully for his works. God is the most efficient reckoner. Chasing a mirage. So, this worldly life and the works of disbelievers are like, what they care about in this world is mostly is the money, and other pleasure of this world, vanities, um, building empires, hoarding money, whatever, um, keeping all the expensive toys and whatnot. God said, what is that gonna do for anybody? We all are gonna leave this world and leave those things behind. So basically, these people are chasing a mirage. What is a mirage? Is if you're in desert and the sun is shining and you look at the distance, you feel like something is shining, maybe it's water. You run after it, but it is an illusion of water. So God says, when these people will keep running after this mirage, and at the end, what will they find? They will find God instead. When they die and open their eyes, where are they going to be? They will be facing God that day suddenly. And what a shock that would be. And then God will fully requite them for their works. God says He's the most efficient reckoner. God is the best judge. So, and if this is what they wanted, um, they got that in this life. But basically, they were running after a mirage, and then they did nothing for the hereafter, and they will find nothing there except the bad stuff. Exile from God, total darkness. Another allegory is that of being in total darkness in the midst of a violent ocean with waves upon waves, in addition to thick fog, darkness upon darkness. If he looked at his hand, he could barely see it. Whomever God deprives of light will have no light. Do you not realize that everyone in the heavens and the earth glorifies God? Even the birds as they fly in a column. Each knows its prayer and its glorification. God is fully aware of everything they do. To God belongs the sovereignty of the heavens and the earth, and to God is the final destiny. Do you not realize that God drives the clouds, then gathers them together, then piles them on each other? Then you see the rain coming out of them. He sends down from the sky loads of snow to cover whomever he wills, while diverting it from whomever he wills. The brightness of the snow almost blinds the eyes. God controls the night and day. This should be a lesson for those who possess eyes. And God created everything, every living creature from water. Some of them walk on their bellies, some walk on two legs, and some walk on four. God creates whatever He wills. God is omnipotent. We have sent down to you clarifying revelations. Then God guides whoever wills in a straight path. Okay, so subhanallah, so many allegories and so many parables here, from chasing a mirage to the light of God. And how does it feel like when we are exiled from mm, God, total darkness? We're already by distance so far away from God in this world, you know, and the hell will be the farthest place. Hell is not in existence yet. That would be the eighth universe. We are on the seventh universe. There's six. We're seven universes away from God. So the eighth will be opened after the day of judgment, and that would be hell. That's even further down. Um, and that's going to be total darkness. So the allegory God is saying, God, we read earlier that, God is the light of the heavens and the earth. And he bestows his light upon whomever he chooses or who deserves his light, so they can see, so they can see the right path and choose it and walk on it to be redeemed. And absence from his light is the other thing, is darkness. And in the midst of a violent ocean, imagine not just darkness, but you're in the middle of a violent ocean. You can't even see your own hands, let alone you see the path. Where are you going? There's ocean in the middle of the ocean. You see no end to it. And it's complete darkness. How horrified you will be. I cannot even imagine that. I cannot imagine being in a dark room on in my own house for a few minutes, like when suddenly there is a thunderstorm and the lights are gone. It feels horrifying. You cannot walk. You suddenly want to look for the nearest candle in the house. Within few minutes, you're just panicking. Imagine without God's light. God says it's like you're in total darkness in the middle of a violent ocean, meaning the waves are just like hills and up and down, and the wind is blowing, and you have no idea where you are. And addition to that is a thick fog. Now, this is quite a scary picture. Once again, this is a parable for us to imagine this darkness upon darkness. The kind of darkness where you cannot even see your own hand. And that's completely a blackout. Because that's how it is without God's light. And God says, whomever He deprives from His light will have no light. Forget about it. Those who choose not to have God's guidance are actually in this situation. They are living like this in complete darkness because they all they are seeing is illusions, not real path or the enlightenment. or the clarity of anything, which comes only with God's light. Those who are not don't believe in God are living in total exile from God, in total darkness. And they're just randomly doing things which are taking them nowhere. So God tells us it's just not us. Do we not realize that everyone in the heavens and the earth glorifies God? All the animals, birds, they have God's guidance, they have God's light. Even they fly in a column with God's, because they follow God's light, they follow God's design. They are creatures who are submitting to God. They have their guidance, complete guidance, how to survive this life. They exactly know what to do. They never deviate from their design. Each knows its prayer and its glorification. They all glorify God and they know what to pray, how to glorify God. You see a bird chirping and making sounds. Whatever there is, there's everything is glorifying God. And God is fully aware of everything they do. To God belongs all sovereignty of the heavens and the earth. And to God is final destiny of every creature, all of us. He is the only sovereign. He controls everything. Everything belongs to him in the heavens and the earth. And God said, do you not realize that God drives the clouds? How do we have any control that how to make clouds, and then we are putting this temperature or this water level which goes up, and with the temperature it turns into clouds and then brings the rain. We have no control. Only God is. These angels are driving the winds and doing everything by God's design, following God's command of where it should rain, where it shouldn't, where it should be snowing. And certain areas will have tons of snow and certain areas will be deserts. And God gives the example of this. Even the snow can be so bright when sun is shining on snow that it literally you need to wear sunglasses. I mean, it can hurt your eyes. So all these examples from God about this earth and heavens and everything in between. And the name of the surah is the light. Light. This is God's light, and all the existence is through God's light. Without light, there is no existence. Nothing can grow, nothing will be nourished. If, we will be in dark age, and who knows, everything will be dead then. And God created every living creature from water, as we all know through science, that this is an element which is necessary for every existence, is water based, you know. And then creatures which walk on their bellies, like that you must have seen the sea lions in the otters, and they walk on their bellies, and some creature walk on two legs, four. We are the two-legged animals, creatures, and we see a lot of four-legged. Here's my dogs in front of me walking on all four. God is omnipotent. He can make whatever he wants in whatever design he wants. So all designs he has shown us. The one they fly, they walk, they underwater, whatnot, subhanallah. And God says, we have sent down to you clarifying revelation. Then God guides whomever wills in a straight path. It's our will. We want to be guided, God will guide us. All we need to do is ask for guidance, which we do in our contact prayers. That you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. Guide us in the right path, which is so important to ask God for all the times. Otherwise, we'll be in the darkness, and we'll have no guidance if we don't seek His guidance. Inshallah, at that point, I will end today's Quran study, and God willing, we'll open up for discussions and comments. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Mashallah, thank you. Perfect timing. Good job, Mashallah.
Mashallah, Sister Nudra, thank you. Good for
MashaAllah. Lots of parables. I was like, oh.
Mhm.
God's light, that concave mirror, is just, I'm sure how many others will have many different ways
Mhm.
of looking at it. Mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, mashallah, very good, steady.
Mashallah. Thanks, brother.
I actually, Salaamu Alaikum. I actually never understood 35. So I thought one day, you have to have an experiment and really do it to understand what God is talking about in 35.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think some people have tried, like, it must be a geometrical, some kind of experiment, right? To
Yeah,
see the reflection in a
yeah.
with a concave mirror and all that. Allahu Akbar. We are so fortunate to even be able to recite God's revelations today. And so many people are away from Quran, uh, not have no access, even though they physically have a Quran or many Qurans in their homes, but not been able to read or reflect upon these verses, such beautiful verses. And it just takes you somewhere in the world where, subhanallah, when God gives the example in this way, they're straightforward verses, and then there are these parables and allegorical verses where you can just run your imagination and actually even then get tired, like your imagination is so limited. Good news as well as warnings, that the exile from God, total darkness, is so scary. It's the first time I noticed the pearl-like star. Like, the glow of pearl
Mhm.
is very different from a glow of diamond, right?
Yeah, diamond I think is more shiny,
Yeah, and the pearl is like very
subtle. Like,
subtle and soft on the eyes.
yes, I would
But
say.
yeah, and still, yeah, it has a different kind of beauty.
Yeah, mashallah.
Mashallah. Well, these are the elements we see on the earth, right? And so the parables are according to these. But the elements of the hereafter are gonna be so different. And God says, you have no idea, actually no idea, obviously. we're limited to these things, imagining these things, right? What we can see in this life and the earthly material, but the heavenly material is beyond our imagination.
I want to just say, I know you talked about the dress code and how it talks about the tyrannical Arab traditions. And so today, I was driving down the street and I look to my left and I see a bunch of Mormons. Like there's 3 or 4 guys, and and then behind them, there was a group of like 4 or 5 girls, also Mormons, and they were both like if you looked at the guys, they looked just like the Sunni Muslims, like without a mustache, and they just had long beards. And the girls, they were wearing these, they were all dressed in black, and they were wearing these black clothes covered like pretty much from head to toe. And then they were wearing like these black scarves, and the guys were wearing black hats, and then I showed it to Huda and she's like, oh, that's just like they're wearing hijabs. I'm like, yeah. I was like, it's the same Satan, he just can't get very creative, so he has to use the same style for both of
But
them.
there are some Jews who wear hijab on their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Some I don't know what are they called, but I saw once pictures. They were at the airport with wearing hijab on their faces.
Yeah.
It must be somewhere, in Old Testament about subduing your eyes, or
Mm-hmm.
do not, like, women should not stare at them either, so they must be thinking we're pretty good looking. The women should not stare at. Let us be safe from the evil eyes.
Mm-hmm. So,
So, or they rather cover their
okay.
face. Maybe their moms wanted them to be safe from those girls. Because it's all, these today's religions are based on just cultural super um, what is it called, superstitions and all that, mostly in it.
Yeah. Also, where it says encourage marriage to discourage immorality. I mean, how do you guys see the encouragement? Like, how do you encourage people? Like, when you see a single person, you advocate them that's better to find someone, or
Yeah. Yeah. Dilemma of parents today. Come on, get married already. Yeah, I guess, like, to to get them prepared, like, it's better that
Mhm,
the time is right that you get married. Instead, like, this society does not encourage their children to get
mhm.
married, right? They just
Yes, you
let them
encourage the
be.
opposite.
Yeah. Like,
It
oh
discourages
no.
marriage.
Yeah. Why? What is the rush? Why you want to
Mm-hmm.
marry so young? There's play and have fun
Mm-hmm.
before you settle
Yeah.
down. Then you cannot. That's why they have those
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's party on their last day, like
Oh
last day
yeah.
of freedom. They feel like this is freedom, and then you're gonna get tied.
Yeah. I mean, if the person who's about to get married didn't, you know, commit any immoral acts, then they definitely committed on that night just before they get married.
Yeah, they force them. Okay, this is your last day of freedom, so-called freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because see, according to that, they have created this the concept of adultery
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
That it is only after you
Mm.
get
Oh
married and
yeah.
you
Oh yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Mm.
that is, they think that is a gross sin, but
Mm.
not before. So do
Mm.
what you have to do before. After that, it would be considered as adultery. Whoever even practice some sort of religion,
Mm.
majority does not even care about that.
But in the Bible, actually, even premarital is considered a sin too, and the Bible name it fornication.
Yeah, but see, there in the Quran there is one word used, right? So I'd say like for the lack of a better term, you'd use one word to describe it, like you can't. So I mean, the word that the Messenger of the Covenant chose to write was adultery, but in Arabic, really, there's no distinction. Like, and Arabic is a very, very efficient language, right? For example, like for dates, there's several words to explain as different kinds of dates. When I say dates, I mean like the fruit dates, not dates, not dating, but different kinds of species of dates have different words. So it's a very efficient language. So if God wanted to separate them out, like he could have separated them and said, outside or marriage, or before getting married or after getting married, you don't do. But in Arabic, really, there is no distinction between the two. So there's only one word that describes it, and that encompasses all of it. And so, I mean, when you translate it, you're translating it to the closest word, and the closest word to that would be adultery. But that does not mean that, you cannot, for example, like if I had to translate it, I was doing a translation of this, and in my language, like there was no word to describe both of them. I mean, I'd be forced to pick one. So I would pick one of the two, because if you say fornication, then it doesn't cover adultery. If you say adultery, then it doesn't cover fornication, right? Like technically speaking, if you go strictly by the English language dictionary. But I believe he found the closest word. But the Messenger of the Covenant talked about adultery, and he talks about the things that are wrong, things that they were doing wrong with adultery, and he said that they made the punishment wrong, like by stoning them and stuff. But he didn't say that they're also miscategorizing adultery and it's only between married couples or one of the married spouse or something. So that, because that part was right. I mean, um, because if you ask any Arabic speaker, I mean, they'll tell you zina, which is the word, the Quranic word that used. That's why God used Arabic to explain the laws in the Quran. So you can always go back to that and refer to it. So it's very specific for different things, but for adultery, there's no distinction. So, and that's how we know that. And also if you look at it from a logical perspective, it it makes sense. As God has committed certain law, made certain laws, and you're going outside of it. So it doesn't make sense that you have one standard for married people and then another moral standard for another group of people. The idea is to just have the highest moral standard, and only allow relations that are authorized by God, and outside of that is adultery. um and so, I mean, like for example, when he talked about the verse where it says the idols inflict great pain upon them, to the extent of killing their own children, and he gives the example of the Saudi children. So, if example of the Saudi princess, he says a perfect example is the internationally infamous incident of the execution of the Saudi princess for alleged adultery. And says God's law institutes whipping, not execution, as a punishment for adultery, while the idolatrous laws stipulate execution. Now, in this case, the Saudi princess was unmarried, right? And then so was the guy. They were both unmarried, but it says for they accused him of adultery, and it says God's law for adultery is whipping, not execution, as a punishment. But he could have easily said, but they were also miscategorized by calling it adultery, for example, but he doesn't say that. um
Yeah, actually, I saw the intelligence behind using one word, adultery alone, versus, in the Bible, adultery and fornication.
mhm,
Because when Muhammad and I had found out that about that adultery situation that went on, we had to come to our conclusion of, what we believe. And I remember we're saying that, okay, you're married, and
mhm,
then I'm single. What do you call
mhm,
that? What do you call that?
mhm,
So then we ended up back at adultery.
mhm,
So there's not a different standard for the unmarried and the
mhm,
married. So then we saw the intelligence behind having one word for
mhm.
both.
Yeah, I mean, then you're just giving an exit for unmarried person to go and sleep with as many unmarried people as they want, and then any married person could lie to them and say, I'm unmarried, and we can have sex, and then they find out that the person's married too. And I mean, there's so many such scenarios. It wouldn't make sense for God to give a green light to go and sleep with other single people. That's not a you know a Quranic thing. Like God says, you should not commit adultery, right? And the like just and only, I mean, the law is that you only only what is legally yours, or which is for the non-submitters, and people you're married to. So that encompasses everything. So if anybody goes outside of that law, then there's a punishment for it, and that's the 100 lashes. So because obviously then if it was
Yeah.
different, then there would be a different punishment for unmarried people, just simply unmarried people. And there's no, we know there's no such thing. For we have a distinction between like slave women versus free women, with their punishment being half of that of free women. But we don't have one for, say, like if you're not married or anything like that. So in fact, there's no such distinction anywhere in the Quran.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about it, if I, just thinking off the top of my head, if you do have a distinction, then the verse where it says you have to be chaste before marriage, and that would be contradicting. Because if you're going with, adultery is only for the married,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, then you're
Then
not gonna be chaste.
you're not obeying that law.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what would be the incentive to encourage a highest moral standard and strong family values and everything when there's no consequences for doing this kind of stuff? And why would you even want to get married then and then be restricted when you can just sleep with as many people as you want? Nobody would get married then. Everybody would just stay single and commit adultery.
Right. Masha Allah.
Mashallah. Yeah, that's true. Alhamdulillah, God law makes so much sense.
Praise God, subhanallah. And everything is so clear.
Yeah.
Imagine these verses, and then God calls this surah as like a law as well, decreed as law. So these are all like little laws, even like getting permission uh, before entering somebody's homes and stuff like that, such little things. But this is a law abiding citizen of God's laws, right? That we follow every law. Some are small and some are big. Just like, in the society, um, some traffic violations are big, some are small, like a parking ticket, You parked at a wrong place, still part of a law, still breaking a law. Maybe it's a $30 ticket. Crossing a red light, more than 200 or something, 300 something, right? Bigger law breaking, small law breaking, still law breaking. So God has described from smaller laws to big laws of our existence, how we should be living a life which is best for us by God's permission. You know, who knows who knows better than God what is best for you, right? What is best for us? That everything God says, this is purer for you. The purity is coming from God's words. Like, if we could only follow and respect every God given law, how perfect our life would be. You know, certain laws we violate knowingly or unknowingly, and certain laws, for example, getting angry, you know, that's how God says, you know, when angered, they're suppressor of their angers. So God says, suppress your anger, don't get angry. So we should be doing that. It's like tiniest things to everything which is good for us. God knows what is good for us. Anger is not good for us. Getting permission before entering the house is good for us. You know, like the world would be so peaceful and amicable if we follow God's laws. But of course, the chaos is there because of Satan. Satan makes people go free, live in the darkness, you know, do whatever you want to do. And then there's random things, random consequences happen to them, and then they scream, oh, why me? Well, were you following God's laws? No. So God's laws are perfect. And then something like as big as cutting part of your body is not in Quran, not even a hint, no description, no method, and they're making it God's law. You know, why? How could that be slipped from Quran? That just boggles my mind, you know. There's something like circumcision being practiced as a law of God, while there is nothing tracing to that practice anywhere in the Quran. You can't find it. Why would it not be there?
I actually do have a question about 27. I understand what it means, but I don't know of anybody doing this. So then I have to look at a different scenario. It says, I seek refuge in God from Satan to reject it. It says, O you who believe, do not enter homes other than yours without permission from their inhabitants and without greeting them. This is better for you that you may take heed. I understand what it says. However, people generally don't do this. People don't go to someone's house um, without permission or without greeting them. So the question is, mummies and Quran study go away. Um, so the question is it something like I still can't imagine if someone would do that, but I know of a scenario whereby, there's a community whereby they would show up at someone's house if it's a birthday, unannounced. Maybe they'll take a birthday cake. Um would that encompass verse 27? But the greeting part would not. Yeah, of course they will ring the bell and they would greet them. So I'm still not understanding if people would do this. People actually do this.
Oh, can I say? I have seen this a lot. Um, where I, grew up. And those kind of people are like relatives who'll just show up at relatives' house, especially those days when there were no telephones available. They would just show up and then say, oh, and just start entering the house as soon as the others open. You know, many will greet, oh, Assalamu Alaikum, and then just keep on walking inside. Like if they open the door, we must enter. Not, no, I didn't see people asking, can I come in? No, it's just, oh, this is my relative, I can just go. Or these are my friends, and hey, we're here, surprise, you know. Some would say surprise, and some wouldn't even say that. And I have seen in this society, like people hanging out and drunk people just showing up at other people's doors. They're like, hey, buddy, we're here. Got something for us, you know? I have seen it all. So and there's the remote areas in Pakistan, people still doing that. Here, I don't know, is more, this society has, are following a lot of etiquettes, I would say, which they call, you know, more civilized, quote unquote. But imagine these etiquettes are like centuries old, and God has, it's from these books. I'm sure people would have started to show respect at showing at before somebody's door.
Okay, so the scenario you give initially, that's what happened where I grew up too. But I didn't think that, it's family, so family just comes in and walk in
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
eat and do whatever. So I didn't think that's that scenario.
Mm.
I just thought maybe strangers or someone you don't know that well.
See, God says other than your own. So any house which
Other
is
than
not your
you.
own, whether it's your uncles or your daughters or your sons, your grandfather, just don't,
Yeah.
you know, show up there. They could be involved in anything at the moment, you know, privacy and all that.
Yeah, yeah, that makes actually when I was reading it, I realized it says other than yours. But where you grew up with this, because I said I don't know the situation, but where I grew up, whatever you spoke about, we did that and we just took it for
Yeah,
granted.
we did that too. If we did that, others did it to us. It was just happening all the time. Like then you were like, okay, they're here now. Now cook for them too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
because that's part of the customs, right?
Yeah. And that's still happening
Mm-hmm.
currently all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So coming back to the situation whereby I live in a community, North America, and I have a cake and I showed up for someone's birthday and I say surprise. Would that fall under this verse? Because I know that, scenarios like that do happen.
Sorry, I will answer in a minute. If somebody else would like to say something, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I was away. Was there a question?
So we're discussing verse 27. And if it's a scenario where I live in a community in North America and I know it's someone's birthday, so I show up with a cake and I say surprise, happy birthday. Does that fall under verse 27?
Oh, you want to surprise them?
Okay, so this is a custom in,
No, no,
in North
no,
America.
I
So,
know. So you want
if you
to
belong to,
but any you want to surprise them, but you just surprise them in their home without anybody knowing you're at the house.
so say for example, you with a family, your own family, and then you show up at that family's house with a birthday cake and you say, surprise, happy birthday. Does that fall under verse 27?
Well, I mean, you gotta have permission from somebody. Like you normally, typically, like if you want to surprise someone, I mean, let's say, you somebody from the family would be whose house you're in would be with you on the surprise, right? So they'll know you're coming and you have their permit. their permission to be at the house, uh,
Okay.
right?
Okay, so
Like you
basically
won't
the
just
first,
randomly be just you won't enter their house like a thief.
so in North America, right? Every someone's home on Saturday, and I just show up with a cake and I say, "Surprise, happy birthday!" But the person's home. I ring the doorbell. They open. They feeling whether they wanting to entertain at the time or not. They generally wouldn't say no.
Yeah,
So the
but that's
question,
asking permission when you ring the bell and you're at the door.
okay,
Yeah,
got it,
yeah.
got it, got it. So that doesn't fall on the 27.
No, no.
Okay, okay.
That would be like if you just came in without permission, you were at the house, and that would be wrong, right? Because you don't know what you're gonna see if you just randomly enter into somebody's house without permission.
Okay, got it. Masha
Mhm.
Allah. So
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
problem, no problem.
I know, Salman, you asked about, verse 32. What do we do to encourage single people to get married? Salman?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't been a submitter committee for too long, but I think what we could encourage the single people to do, and especially, I was told that because of circumstances, right? Going along the lines of Quran, it's very difficult to it's very difficult, for people to feel awkward to just say, to say someone that they may like that person, that can we go spend time together? So
Mhm.
I was told that a good thing to do would, especially if you're married, that you invite the single people to your home and for dinner, and in that way they can get to know each other. So it takes the awkwardness out of it. And of course, encouraging the single to get married. You're always thinking who's single, not always thinking, but it's in the back of your head who's single, and see if something can work out. There are a lot of submitters
Mhm.
who've, on both side party who's married, they've arranged
Yeah,
them to meet and stuff.
um, I think that doesn't mean like matchmaking. Like it just says you encourage them, right? Because
Yes,
now that's
encouraging.
kind of
That's
like matchmaking. Sounds like.
But that is
well,
part of it too, in a way, encouragement, if
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you know that they're willing, that then
yeah.
yeah, then you get into it. But let's say, if you just want to God says just encourage them, or you just encourage them. Maybe somebody's not willing uh to take on that kind of a responsibility at a certain time, right? But or not ready yet, but that they don't may not have the means, for example, right? But then there's people that will be ready and they might be looking and they'll be like, yeah, I could use an extra hand, for example, if someone wants to help me find a match or something, and then you could say offer your help in that area, maybe, right?
Yeah. But I do know of a lot of submitters who are in different countries
Mm-hmm.
and a married couple or family has suggested, and whatever Allah wills after that, but at least they suggest and made the connection. Yeah, and that makes it easier a lot of times, because I was told by a single person, because there are criteria for what you're doing. It and sometimes a bit awkward if you don't know if the person will like you, or so it's better than that, especially if you're married from a family, you invite both, and then in that way they can see if they like each other, or the getting to know phase, if there's any chemistry or attraction. But there's definitely a need, because I've spoken to a few single people, and there's definitely a need for us in the submitter community to do more for the single people.
Yeah, mashallah. I agree. I think that is also part of encouragement. Like encouragement is not very limited. I guess it all is part of encouraging, right? That and helping them, um, like a branch of encouragement for sure. But encouragement, I think, directly is to encourage them to get married, and because this society really discourages people, so as submitters should be encouraging to get married as soon as you can afford and all that, right? And start looking for one, instead of being lazy and like, because it could lead them towards being astray and all that, right? If they delay it too much on purpose, um, and say, oh no, I'm better off as a single. So no, God's commandment is that you be looking for a righteous spouse. uh, so that's what God wants. Because some people say, no, I'm better off as never getting married. I know some people believe that getting married and having children is a test. Let's not even do it. I'm going to devote my life to God. And they're doing it. Right, Solomon?
Well, some people are saying they don't want to
Mm-hmm.
get married because they want to
Mm-hmm.
devote themselves to God.
Yeah, and that children are a test.
Oh,
You don't know those
uh,
people? I do.
no. Oh, okay. Okay.
I thought you knew
Yeah,
that.
that's more like the
Hermetism.
hermetism, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we're not allowed for hermetism.
Exactly, but these people have decided that they're not going to do it because they don't want to get into the test of
Mm.
having children. On
Oh,
purpose,
I
they don't
thought.
But
want to
if
do it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
if you're not tested that way, you'll be tested other ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How can you like, and hermetism is not allowed.
Assalamu alaikum.
Samali.
Sorry, I'm at work, so I'm not able to. I've just been listening to you guys.
We're missing you, Adam.
I just want to add to this one that you guys have been talking about, the verse 32, that you shall encourage. So when they say that they may marry, I mean, righteous among your male and female servants. So, so they're talking about righteous people, and coming from the previous surah, believers, and then the addition to that is the righteousness. Now that completes the picture. So does that mean that we are encouraging only those are righteous? Because if they're marrying your righteous people, then they have to be righteous. We cannot have an idolater who does idol worship to marry righteous people, right? So then, if that's a, then it really narrow down to a very small community that the believers and righteous people, right? It's a question. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I actually missed the point. Can you
So the,
say that again, please?
so the point is that it when you're encouraging, I don't think it's adding everybody. It's just only adding those talking about the submitters, the believers, not everybody else. Like if you have a coworker at or they are different religion, or this verse doesn't even apply on them, right? Because they're not
Those of
even.
you,
Yeah, of
yeah,
course
it
not.
says you should encourage those of you who are single,
Yeah,
like
it's all
you know,
for,
those
like,
among
Quran is
you,
all
you
for.
know, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
believers and righteous, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Quran applies to those who want to, you know, follow the Quran.
yeah. Mashallah, just the journal comment about this surah is just all about um, men and women in general. It's amazing. This surah is just concentrated on one topic about men and women and chastity and respecting God's law as far as male female goes. And pretty much every verse you go through, it's talking about the same. You knock before you go. You get a permission. It says protection, protection. Subdue your eyes. Dress modestly. And from the beginning to end, it's pretty much straightforward. So when you read the verse about the God is the light, it's a long verse. It's amazing if you it says concave mirror. So if you see the concave mirror and you put a light in front of it, so what it does is it reflects the light from the concave mirror and goes in a straight, like you have a torch type of situation. It doesn't go all over the place. It focuses on something. That's what the concave mirror does. That's what my understanding is. So then God says God guides whoever He will. So that's mean it's like a torch, and God only spots on you. It's like you're on the stage, and the light is only shining on you when you're performing, and not everybody else. I think that's one of the analogy I come to. I guess my understanding one of it.
Also, when God says advocate righteousness and forbid the evil, I guess it can, in general, we can advocate righteousness to other people around us if we see them spreading immorality, right? We can advise like our colleagues or acquaintances that get married. That's a good thing. Just like in general, God wants us to advocate righteousness and forbid evil. Um, it depends, like who we're talking to, right? Those who are not non-believers, or even some so-called of our Muslim relatives. If we see them doing these things, whether they're submitters or not, like Muslims in general know not to commit adultery. Um, but people still are under the age of 40, and we can, advocate righteousness and advocate, encourage them to get married so they stop doing what they're doing. In general, it's a good thing, right? Immorality is immorality being spread. no matter what.
It's like when it comes to what Sister Nutrit was saying, it's like, yes, we want to tell everybody, but you lose a lot of friends just by saying anything like that. So, as you go through life, you see so many people that's doing it, and you're like, you wish you can just tell them, how wrong it is in the sight of God. But yes, um, I think of every 20, I probably say to one person.
Yeah, very hard to say. You're right, Pamela. Something you really, this society is so used to it. Like you see them going through so many people, one breakup after another breakup and another breakup, and they start sleeping with people, thinking they're boyfriends and girlfriends, and it's legal now. It's consent. It's with the consent. Nothing wrong with it. Two adults, and it's just, and you see the heartbreak, you know, over and over. And like I know somebody I used to know that this person every few months one relationship breaks and then they're crying and going through this really low self-esteem period, and then few days later you see another person in their life, everything just starting all over again, very happy temporary honeymoon period, and then they go through the breakup again, in a very short time I've seen who knows how many relationship. It wasn't a person I knew, but they were neighbors. So you 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 realize how God's system is perfect. God wants to save you from all these emotional garbage you go through, rather than have one, person in your life. Marriage is so much more than just the physical aspect of it. It's just how this society takes relationships is very destructive for one's um, self, respect and self-esteem and everything. I don't know how long it must take to get over one relationship, then they jump into another and then another. Oh God.
In my parents' generation, this adultery was so less, so less. Like they just got married. They didn't do any of these things. And then my generation, there was a lot more. But in this current generation, kids being 20s, it's a lot more. So I guess as we progress, as the year go by, it's getting worse and worse. Yeah.
Yeah, in this society, but like another abuse is happening, alternative to this, what this society is doing with outside the marriage relationship now in Pakistan. People are exercising polygamy. 5, 6 marriages has become a norm. Hidden ones. They know somebody, just have a
Wow.
secret nikah and keep them aside, doing something legal, they think. Whether their other spouse knows or not, but they have several wives at the same time. This
So
is something.
I know it's illegal what they're doing, but the number was stop at 4 at the same time. So they're going to 5 and 6 now?
There is no number left anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. But like recently, government is passing a bill. This government that they cannot have secret um, marriage, and they must have the permission of the first wife, which is not on. Once again, it's not. Quran doesn't say have a permission then you can marry. Once again, the criteria comes, which we had discussed previously with our other fellow uh, person here. It's just not that. Just have mutual attraction and then you get married. That's what people are exercising, and some actually getting married too at the same time. Because look at these Arabs. They have no numbers in their harems. How many wives they have at a time. So there's really not a law they are following.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, they have lots of wives.
I think it comes to for them to like, can you afford them? Yes, I can, and have it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Pity marriage in their
yeah.
case. Oh, I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that, when you get married and, you have a spouse in your family, I mean, the family needs your love and care and attention. And God says you cannot be equitable in giving that attention to more than one, and God says if you cannot be equitable, you should be content with just one. And that's not any material attention. God is talking about, you can when you cannot be equitable, I mean, you cannot give your attention and your love to more than one family. So God is in the Quran, God is encouraging people to just be content with one. I mean, this came at a time where people had so many wives, so Quran is, I think, the only scripture that encourages people to be monogamous, right? But there is this trap for people who have disease in their hearts. But it's very clear that you marry only for the, if they're orphans, then you marry for the sake of them. The widows to provide a father figure for widows. But how many of them do we even see marrying widows? Nobody cares about widows. Once there's a widow, I mean, these people just leave her behind, right? And left on their
Exactly.
own. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
or how
looking for
many.
virgins and whatnot,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, not submitters or what
Yeah,
believers.
nobody
Yeah.
cares as soon as somebody has a child
Mm-hmm.
with them. Such a stigma in this society still that nobody really cares about the giving child
Mm-hmm.
and or a home.
Mm-hmm.
It's about all about raising them as righteous believers. Like generation is depending to have a father figure, to
Mm-hmm.
do something about it, and
Yeah.
but they're looking for, yeah, very hard for those women to get married again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not even saying that women who are divorced, for example, and you can marry their divorcees to provide father figure, because people who are divorced, I mean, they can still have a father. The kids will still have a father, and they can look up to him as their father figure. But someone who's a widow, I mean, the father is gone, right? And they're orphans, and they need help financially in order to sustain themselves, as well as a father figure to look up to and look after the family. So that's definitely a good cause if there is really a strong reason behind it. But obviously this is clear abuse of God's law in the Quran. And people think that uh they're I mean, they're just abusing the Quran, for their own lusts, and as it says in the appendix very clearly. I mean, we went over it a bunch of times. Of I think it's 34. It says. Uh, the true believers who care about their children will advise them and remind them repeatedly. Not sorry, not that. What am I? I meant the one about polygamy. I was going to virginity. Um, Appendix 30. Yeah, pretty clear about that. Masha Allah.
Yeah,
The Quranic.
mashallah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that. Like it's not even
Mm,
the criteria is more towards the
orphans.
orphans, right?
Mm,
They have no father, and especially in the times when mostly men worked outside and women had no source of income.
mm,
It was even more applicable at that time, right? But today, I was just mentioning like whether somebody's uh, hu- spouse have died or somebody's divorced with a child, it's like they're not given priority either way, orphaned or non-orphaned, but married with children, and have divorced. It's their lust that they're looking for is like, okay, I'm allowed to have more than one wife. That is basically having an affair with somebody outside the marriage and then giving it a title. Uh, so many people are doing that in Pakistan. I've never seen this before. Anyway, so can we stop this scream? I actually have to do something right now.
mm. Yeah, sure. I think nobody has any comments about the verses we read. Inshallah, we can stop the stream here, and we need a teacher for Saturday, God willing. I was before Nadat, so oh no, Ahmad, you Adam was before Nadat, right?
You were.
Oh, I was. Okay,
Saturday,
so
you were, right?
okay, yeah, you're right, yeah. So Adam, would you be able to do this Saturday, God willing?
Adam is at work.
He's at work, so maybe he's not
Okay,
right
okay,
there at the moment.
okay. So either Adam or myself, God willing. So
Yeah,
thank
you
you
can
guys
text
for
him
joining
and
us
find
on,
out later on, inshallah.
yeah, inshallah, for joining us on YouTube. Our next study is gonna be on Saturday, God willing, at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and God willing, we'll see you guys then. God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.